There's no shortage of drama when it comes to intelligence work. Even when you think you've mastered the game, the rules change overnight. The shadows shift, the players evolve, and suddenly everything you thought you knew becomes obsolete. In a world where information is the ultimate weapon and trust is a luxury few can afford, one woman discovered that being underestimated might just be her greatest advantage. They called her a desk jockey, a number cruncher, someone who belonged behind a computer screen, not in the field where real intelligence officers earn their stripes. But sometimes the most dangerous operatives are the ones nobody sees coming. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the sterile corridors of the Langley Intelligence Center, casting everything in that familiar pale wash that made even the most vibrant personalities look washed out. Rachel Morrison had walked these hallways for 7 years, clutching manila folders and carrying laptop bags filled with data analysis that few people bothered to read thoroughly. At 32, she had become invisible in the way that only mid-level intelligence analysts could, present but unremarkable, essential but overlooked. Her cubicle sat in the middle of a sea of identical workstations, each occupied by someone parsing signals intelligence, financial records, or communication intercepts. Rachel's specialty was pattern recognition in enemy communications, a skill that required the kind of methodical patience that made her colleagues' eyes glaze over during briefings. While field operatives got the glory and section chiefs got the recognition, analysts like Rachel formed the invisible backbone of modern intelligence operations. Born in Portland, Oregon, to a high school math teacher and a librarian, Rachel had always been drawn to puzzles that others found tedious. Her undergraduate degree in applied mathematics from Oregon State had led to a master's in cryptographic analysis from Georgetown, which had eventually landed her this position at the CIA's Directorate of Analysis. Her colleagues knew her as someone who could spot anomalies in data streams that others missed, but they also saw her as someone who lacked the aggressive instincts necessary for operational work. The perception wasn't entirely unfair. Rachel preferred the quiet certainty of numbers to the chaos of human intelligence gathering. She arrived at work each morning at exactly 7:45 a.m., settled into her ergonomic chair with a cup of black coffee, and began her daily ritual of combing through intercepted communications from various hostile intelligence services. Her supervisor, Deputy Section Chief Marcus Chen, appreciated her thoroughness but had long ago categorized her as a valuable but limited asset. Brilliant at analysis, but lacking the field instincts that separated true intelligence officers from career bureaucrats. This dynamic had crystallized during a particularly tense period 18 months earlier, when the agency had been tracking a sophisticated cyber espionage network operating out of Eastern Europe. Rachel had identified several crucial patterns in the group's communication protocols, anomalies that suggested they were planning something significant. Her analysis indicated that the network was preparing to shift from passive intelligence gathering to active operations, possibly targeting critical infrastructure in major American cities. When she'd presented her findings to the weekly intelligence briefing, the reception had been politely skeptical. Senior Operations Officer Daniel Hayes, a 20-year veteran with 3 successful deep cover assignments under his belt, had listened to her presentation with the kind of patient condescension reserved for well-meaning but naive junior staff. "Morrison's analysis is thorough, as always," Hayes had said, his tone suggesting that thoroughness was somehow a limitation rather than an asset. Section Chief Victoria Lawson had nodded thoughtfully, her fingers drumming against the polished conference table. "Rachel, your work is valuable, but we need to be careful about reading too much into statistical anomalies. In the field, human intelligence often tells a different story than the data suggests." Rachel had felt the familiar sting of dismissal, the subtle suggestion that her contributions were useful but ultimately secondary to the real work done by operational officers. She'd gathered her papers, returned to her cubicle, and continued her analysis in relative silence. 6 weeks later, when the cyber espionage network successfully disrupted power grids in 3 major cities during a coordinated attack, her original assessment had proven remarkably accurate. But by then, the moment had passed, and the agency's focus had shifted to damage control and prevention of future attacks. The incident had established a pattern that Rachel found increasingly frustrating. Her analysis would identify potential threats or operational opportunities. Senior officers would politely acknowledge her work while pursuing different strategies based on traditional human intelligence, and months later, events would unfold in ways that vindicated her original assessments. Each cycle reinforced her reputation as a competent analyst while simultaneously undermining any possibility of her being taken seriously as an operational asset. The breaking point came during a classified briefing about emerging threats in Southeast Asia. The agency had been monitoring increased activity from a sophisticated intelligence network operating out of Singapore, one that appeared to be coordinating with hostile state actors to acquire sensitive American military technology. Traditional surveillance had yielded limited results. The network's security protocols were too sophisticated, their operational patterns too varied to predict using conventional methods. Rachel had been studying the group's communication signatures for months, identifying subtle patterns in their encrypted message traffic that suggested a highly organized structure with multiple operational cells. More importantly, her analysis indicated that the network was preparing for a significant operation, one that would likely involve the physical acquisition of classified materials from a secure facility. During the briefing, she'd outlined her findings with characteristic precision, explaining how the mathematical relationships between message frequencies, transmission times, and routing protocols painted a picture of an organization preparing for something far more ambitious than routine intelligence gathering. Hayes had listened with his usual skeptical attention, occasionally glancing at his smartphone in a way that suggested his mind was elsewhere. When Rachel finished her presentation, he'd leaned back in his chair with the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Morrison, you've done excellent work as usual, but I think you're seeing patterns that aren't really there. Intelligence work isn't just about mathematical models and statistical analysis. It's about understanding human behavior, cultural contexts, operational realities that don't always show up in the data." Operations Director Sarah Kim had nodded in agreement. "The field intelligence we're receiving suggests this network is focused on long-term penetration of academic and research institutions. The patterns Rachel has identified are probably just standard operational security measures, sophisticated but not necessarily indicative of imminent action." Rachel had felt something shift inside her during that meeting, a quiet anger that she'd never experienced in her years of analysis work. Not anger at being wrong, she'd been wrong before and could accept that. Anger at being dismissed without serious consideration, at having her expertise reduced to interesting but ultimately irrelevant statistical observations. After the meeting, she'd returned to her desk and begun working on something she'd never attempted before: a comprehensive operational profile of the Singapore network based purely on data analysis. If traditional human intelligence couldn't penetrate this organization, perhaps mathematical analysis could reveal vulnerabilities that conventional approaches missed. Over the next 3 weeks, working late into the evenings and through weekends, Rachel constructed a detailed picture of the network's structure, operational patterns, and likely objectives. Her analysis suggested that the organization was indeed planning something significant, not the gradual academic infiltration that field intelligence suggested, but a targeted operation aimed at acquiring specific classified materials from a high-security research facility. More importantly, her mathematical modeling had identified what appeared to be the network's command structure, including the likely location of their operational headquarters and the identity of key personnel. The data suggested that the organization's security, while sophisticated in terms of communication protocols, had certain predictable patterns that could potentially be exploited by someone who understood their mathematical foundations. When she'd finished her analysis, Rachel had faced a choice that would define the rest of her career. She could present her findings through normal channels, watch them be politely dismissed by officers who viewed data analysis as a support function rather than an operational tool, or she could do something that no one expected from someone like her, something that would either vindicate her approach to intelligence work or end her career entirely. The decision, when it came, felt less like a choice than an inevitability. Rachel stared at her computer screen at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, the office floor eerily quiet except for the distant hum of servers and the occasional footsteps of night security guards. The classified database access logs showed her digital fingerprints all over files that analysts weren't supposed to cross-reference without supervisory approval. But cross-referencing was exactly what her mathematical models required, and asking for permission would mean explaining a theory that her superiors had already dismissed. The Singapore network's communication patterns had revealed something extraordinary when viewed through the lens of operational mathematics rather than traditional intelligence analysis. Every encrypted message, every routing protocol, every seemingly random transmission schedule followed mathematical relationships that painted a picture more detailed than any human intelligence report. Rachel had discovered that the network wasn't just communicating, they were coordinating with precision that suggested military-level planning. Her unauthorized deep dive into classified systems had uncovered financial records, travel patterns, and communication metadata that, when processed through her pattern recognition algorithms, revealed the network's true scope. This wasn't a small group of technology thieves operating out of Singapore. This was a sophisticated multinational intelligence operation with cells in 7 countries, all reporting to a command structure hidden within what appeared to be a legitimate international consulting firm called Pacific Strategic Solutions. The firm's public face was unremarkable: corporate advisory services, market analysis, business intelligence consulting. But Rachel's mathematical analysis of their financial flows, employee travel patterns, and communication timing had revealed an organization with capabilities that rivaled state intelligence services. More alarming, her data suggested they were in the final stages of planning an operation targeting the Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island, where classified research on next-generation radar systems was being conducted. The breakthrough had come when Rachel discovered that the network's communication protocols contained embedded timing signals that corresponded to real-world logistics patterns. By analyzing the mathematical relationships between message timestamps and known shipping schedules, flight patterns, and hotel reservation systems, she'd been able to construct a detailed timeline of their planned operation. According to her calculations, they intended to infiltrate Brookhaven during a planned security system upgrade scheduled for the following month. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But knowing about the operation and stopping it were entirely different challenges. Rachel's analysis was based on data sources and methodologies that fell outside standard intelligence protocols. She accessed systems without authorization, cross-referenced databases that required supervisory approval, and used analytical techniques that hadn't been formally validated by the agency's methodology review board. Even if her findings were accurate, presenting them through official channels would likely result in disciplinary action for protocol violations rather than operational response. The alternative was something Rachel had never seriously considered: taking direct action based on her intelligence analysis. Not field operations in the traditional sense, she had neither the training nor the authorization for that kind of work. But perhaps there was a middle ground, a way to validate her findings and potentially disrupt the network's operations without violating the chain of command so dramatically that her career would be over before she could prove her theories. The idea came to her during a sleepless night spent reviewing the network's operational security protocols. Their communication systems were sophisticated but followed predictable mathematical patterns. If Rachel could identify the physical location of their command center, something her data analysis strongly suggested was in downtown Singapore, she might be able to gather the kind of direct evidence that would force the agency to take her findings seriously. Not infiltration in the sense that field operatives would attempt, but something more subtle. The network's security was designed to prevent traditional surveillance and human intelligence gathering, but it might be vulnerable to approaches they hadn't anticipated: mathematical analysis combined with technical surveillance methods that didn't require deep cover or extensive field training. Rachel began planning what she privately called a verification operation, a way to confirm her analytical findings through direct observation and technical intelligence gathering. She wasn't planning to steal classified documents or engage in traditional espionage activities. She simply wanted to prove that her mathematical analysis could accurately predict real-world intelligence operations. The first step was understanding the target environment. Pacific Strategic Solutions maintained offices on the 32nd floor of the Marina Bay Financial Center, a gleaming tower that housed dozens of legitimate international businesses. According to public records, they employed 47 people and specialized in market research for technology companies looking to expand into Southeast Asian markets. But Rachel's analysis of their communication patterns suggested that their actual activities were far more sophisticated than their public profile indicated. Her mathematical modeling had identified several vulnerabilities in their operational security: predictable patterns in employee movement, communication protocols that revealed organizational hierarchy, and financial flows that suggested activities far beyond legitimate consulting work. More importantly, her analysis indicated that the organization's command structure was concentrated in a small area of their office space, likely a secure facility designed for sensitive communications and planning activities. Rachel spent 3 weeks developing what she called a technical verification protocol, a systematic approach to confirming her analytical findings through direct observation and electronic intelligence gathering. She wasn't planning to steal classified documents or engage in traditional espionage activities. She simply wanted to prove that her mathematical analysis could accurately predict real-world intelligence operations. The first step was understanding the target environment. Pacific Strategic Solutions maintained offices on the 32nd floor of the Marina Bay Financial Center, a gleaming tower that housed dozens of legitimate international businesses. According to public records, they employed 47 people and specialized in market research for technology companies looking to expand into Southeast Asian markets. But Rachel's analysis of their communication patterns suggested that their actual activities were far more sophisticated than their public profile indicated. Her mathematical modeling had identified several vulnerabilities in their operational security: predictable patterns in employee movement, communication protocols that revealed organizational hierarchy, and financial flows that suggested activities far beyond legitimate consulting work. More importantly, her analysis indicated that the organization's command structure was concentrated in a small area of their office space, likely a secure facility designed for sensitive communications and planning activities. Rachel spent 3 weeks developing what she called a technical verification protocol, a systematic approach to confirming her analytical findings through direct observation and electronic intelligence gathering. She studied building schematics, analyzed security camera placement, researched the technical specifications of the office tower's communication infrastructure, and developed a timeline that would allow her to observe the network's operations without triggering their security protocols. The plan was elegant in its mathematical precision. By positioning herself in specific locations at calculated times, Rachel could observe communication patterns, employee movements, and operational activities that would either validate or invalidate her analytical theories. She would use readily available technical equipment, signal analysis devices, digital cameras with telephoto lenses, and portable computing equipment to gather intelligence that would supplement her mathematical analysis with direct observational data. The beauty of the approach was that it avoided the traditional vulnerabilities that sophisticated intelligence networks prepared for. They expected human intelligence officers, electronic surveillance by state actors, and corporate espionage by competitors. They probably weren't expecting a CIA analyst armed with mathematical models and consumer-grade surveillance equipment to attempt verification of her own analytical findings. Rachel submitted a vacation request for 2 weeks in Southeast Asia, officially described as personal travel to visit college friends working in international business. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. She booked flights to Singapore, reserved a hotel room in the Marina Bay area, and began assembling the technical equipment she would need for her verification operation. The night before her departure, Rachel sat in her Arlington apartment reviewing the operational plan she'd developed.
By traditional intelligence standards, what she was planning wasn't sophisticated. No deep cover identities, no complex technological infiltration, no coordination with field assets. But mathematical analysis suggested that simple approaches were often the most effective against organizations that prepared for complex threats. Rachel submitted a vacation request for 2 weeks in Southeast Asia, officially described as personal travel to visit college friends working in international business. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. She booked flights to Singapore, reserved a hotel room in the Marina Bay area, and began assembling the technical equipment she would need for her verification operation. The night before her departure, Rachel sat in her Arlington apartment reviewing the operational plan she'd developed. By traditional intelligence standards, what she was planning wasn't sophisticated. No deep cover identities, no complex technological infiltration, no coordination with field assets. But mathematical analysis suggested that simple approaches were often the most effective against organizations that prepared for complex threats. Rachel submitted a vacation request for 2 weeks in Southeast Asia, officially described as personal travel to visit college friends working in international business. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest. Analysts took vacation time regularly, and Rachel's request was unremarkable except for its destination. Her supervisor approved the request without particular interest.
The breakthrough came when Rachel realized that the network's operational security had a mathematical vulnerability that extended beyond communication protocols. Their personnel movement patterns, while carefully designed to avoid traditional surveillance, created predictable windows during which their secure facility would have reduced staffing levels. Her analysis identified a 4-hour period every Tuesday evening when only 2 individuals remained in the secure area, apparently conducting what her signal intelligence suggested were routine maintenance procedures on their communication equipment. This presented an opportunity that Rachel's training had never prepared her for, but which her analytical mind approached as a logical problem. If she could access the building during this maintenance window, she might be able to gather the kind of direct evidence that would substantiate her analytical findings beyond any reasonable doubt. The Marina Bay Financial Center's security was sophisticated but designed primarily to prevent unauthorized access by casual intruders or corporate espionage attempts.
Rachel's research revealed that the building used keycard access systems, motion-sensitive cameras, and security guards who followed predictable patrol patterns. But like many commercial facilities, it also had maintenance and service protocols that created legitimate reasons for people to be in the building during off hours. Rachel spent 3 days developing an approach that would allow her to access the 32nd floor during the Tuesday evening maintenance window. Her plan exploited the mathematical predictability of both the building's security protocols and the network's operational patterns. By timing her entry to coincide with scheduled maintenance activities and following routes that minimized her exposure to surveillance systems, she calculated that she could reach Pacific Strategic Solutions offices undetected. The technical aspects were straightforward. Building maintenance schedules were publicly available through city planning documents. Security camera placement could be determined through observation and architectural drawings available in public records. Guard patrol patterns had been documented during her week of baseline surveillance. The network's communication patterns indicated that their Tuesday evening maintenance activities lasted between 3 and 4 hours, providing a window during which external intrusion detection systems would likely be temporarily disabled. Tuesday evening arrived with tropical rain that reduced visibility and provided additional cover for Rachel's approach. She entered the Marina Bay Financial Center through a service entrance that corresponded with scheduled HVAC maintenance, using timing calculated to place her between security patrol cycles. Her equipment was minimal: the laptop configured for signal analysis, a small digital camera, and a portable hard drive capable of copying significant amounts of data. The 32nd floor was dimmer than she had expected, lit only by emergency lighting and the glow from computer equipment visible through glass-walled offices. Rachel followed the layout she had memorized from building schematics, moving toward the area where her signal analysis had indicated the most sophisticated communication equipment was located. Pacific Strategic Solutions' secure facility occupied the northeast corner of the floor, behind doors that required keycard access and appeared to have additional electronic security measures. But Rachel's signal monitoring had detected that the maintenance activities currently in progress had disabled several security systems, creating the access window her mathematical analysis had predicted. Inside the secure facility, Rachel found exactly what her data analysis had suggested she would: a sophisticated intelligence operations center equipped with satellite communication systems, encrypted computer networks, and data storage capabilities that far exceeded anything a legitimate consulting firm would require. Banks of servers hummed quietly in climate-controlled cabinets, their status lights indicating active processing of large amounts of data. More importantly, the maintenance activities had left several computer terminals accessible, their security systems temporarily disabled to allow for system updates. Rachel connected her portable equipment and began copying files that her signal analysis suggested contained operational planning documents. The data transfer proceeded quickly. Her equipment was designed for rapid information gathering rather than comprehensive analysis. What she found exceeded her most optimistic projections. The copied files contained detailed operational plans for the Brookhaven infiltration, including building schematics, security protocols, personnel schedules, and extraction procedures. More significantly, the documents revealed that Brookhaven was only one target in a broader operation designed to acquire classified research from multiple American facilities. The intelligence was extraordinary, but Rachel's mathematical analysis had prepared her for the most critical aspect of the operation: extraction. Her timing calculations indicated she had approximately 20 minutes before the maintenance activities concluded and normal security protocols resumed. She completed her data collection, secured her equipment, and began retracing her route through the building. As she reached the service elevator, Rachel realized that her mathematical approach to intelligence operations had accomplished something that traditional field operatives had been unable to achieve. She had penetrated a sophisticated enemy intelligence network, acquired detailed information about planned operations against American interests, and done so using analytical methods that had allowed her to predict and exploit vulnerabilities that conventional surveillance had missed. The flight back to Washington would give her time to analyze the intelligence she had gathered, but Rachel already knew that her approach to intelligence work had been vindicated in ways that her Langley colleagues couldn't ignore. She was no longer just an analyst who studied enemy communications from the safety of her cubicle. She had become something entirely new, an operational intelligence officer whose weapon was mathematical precision rather than traditional tradecraft. The conference room at Langley felt different this time. Rachel sat at the polished table where she had been dismissed so many times before, but now the dynamic had shifted in ways that no one in the room quite understood yet. Director Kim occupied her usual position at the head of the table, flanked by Operations Chief Hayes and Deputy Director Thompson. What was different was the collection of senior officials who had joined them: Counterintelligence Division Chief Amanda Foster, Technical Operations Director Michael Barnes, and National Security Advisor Representative Catherine Mills, whose presence indicated that Rachel's Singapore operation had attracted attention at the highest levels of government. The intelligence Rachel had acquired wasn't just confirmation of her analytical theories. It was a comprehensive blueprint of an enemy operation that threatened multiple American research facilities. The documents she had copied from Pacific Strategic Solutions revealed a coordinated campaign targeting 7 different classified projects across the United States, with Brookhaven serving as the initial test case for infiltration techniques that would be applied to increasingly sensitive facilities. But the intelligence came with a problem that nobody in the room wanted to acknowledge directly. Rachel had acquired it through unauthorized operations that violated numerous agency protocols and potentially compromised ongoing counterintelligence activities. Her success had created a situation where the agency needed to act on intelligence that had been gathered through methods they couldn't officially sanction. Director Kim opened the session with characteristic directness. "Morrison, your vacation to Singapore appears to have been more productive than most people's official assignments. The intelligence you've provided is extraordinary, but the methods you used to acquire it present significant complications." Hayes leaned forward with the expression he typically reserved for junior officers who had made career-ending mistakes. "Rachel, what you did was essentially freelance espionage operations. You conducted unauthorized surveillance, illegally entered a foreign facility, and stole classified materials from a hostile intelligence service. Any one of those activities could have resulted in international incidents that would have compromised American intelligence operations throughout Southeast Asia." Rachel had prepared for this response. Her mathematical analysis of agency politics had suggested that her superiors would focus on protocol violations rather than operational results. But she had also calculated that the intelligence she had acquired was too valuable regardless of how it had been obtained. "The intelligence indicates that the enemy network's Brookhaven operation is scheduled to commence in 11 days, Rachel replied calmly. "Their infiltration plan exploits specific vulnerabilities in the facility's security upgrade schedule, vulnerabilities that they could only have identified through inside information or sophisticated technical surveillance. If we don't act on this intelligence, we'll lose classified radar research that took 3 years and $40 million to develop." Counterintelligence Chief Foster had been studying the documents while the others spoke. Her experience with hostile intelligence operations had taught her to recognize the difference between routine espionage and sophisticated state-sponsored operations. "Morrison, the operational planning detailed in these documents suggests capabilities that exceed what we've previously attributed to non-state actors. This isn't corporate espionage or opportunistic technology theft. This is military-level intelligence operations targeting strategic American research capabilities."
Technical Operations Director Barnes nodded in agreement. The communication protocols Morrison documented are more sophisticated than what most allied intelligence services used for sensitive operations. The fact that she was able to penetrate their security using mathematical analysis suggests that traditional counterintelligence approaches may be inadequate for addressing this type of threat. The room fell silent as the implications settled. Rachel's unauthorized operation had revealed not just a specific threat to American research facilities, but a fundamental gap in the agency's ability to detect and counter mathematically sophisticated intelligence networks. Her success wasn't just vindication of her analytical approach, it was evidence that the agency's traditional methods might be obsolete for addressing modern intelligence threats. National Security Advisor Representative Mills spoke for the first time. The White House is extremely interested in both the intelligence Morrison acquired and the methods she used to acquire it. The president has been briefed on the Brookhaven threat, and he wants immediate action to prevent the infiltration. But he's also asked for a comprehensive assessment of how our intelligence capabilities need to evolve to address threats that operate using mathematical rather than traditional operational security. Director Kim recognized the shift in the conversation's dynamic. Rachel's protocol violations had become secondary to the strategic implications of her operational success. Morrison, assuming we can address the procedural issues surrounding your Singapore operation, are you prepared to lead the counterintelligence response to the Brookhaven threat? The question hung in the air like a challenge that would define the rest of Rachel's career. Everything she had worked toward, every analytical insight she had developed, every mathematical model she had created had led to this moment. The agency was offering her the opportunity to transition from analyst to operational officer, but on terms that would require her to defend methods that challenged fundamental assumptions about intelligence work. The enemy network's operational security is mathematically predictable, Rachel responded. Their communication protocols, personnel movement patterns, and logistical requirements follow algorithms that can be analyzed and exploited. Traditional counterintelligence approaches focus on human factors and behavioral analysis, but this network's vulnerabilities are mathematical rather than psychological. Hayes interrupted with visible frustration. Morrison, you're talking about reducing intelligence operations to mathematical equations. Human intelligence work requires intuition, cultural understanding, personal relationships, factors that can't be quantified or predicted using statistical models. Agent Hayes, your traditional approaches failed to detect this network despite 3 years of investigation, Rachel replied with quiet confidence. Mathematical analysis identified their operational patterns, predicted their target selection, and located their command structure in less than 6 months. The Singapore operation validated analytical methods that achieved what human intelligence couldn't accomplish. The tension in the room crystallized around a fundamental disagreement about the future of intelligence work. Hayes represented decades of experience with traditional methods that had proven successful in previous operational environments. Rachel represented an analytical approach that challenged those methods by achieving results that traditional techniques had missed. Deputy Director Thompson had been silent throughout the exchange, but now he leaned back in his chair with the expression of someone who had reached a difficult decision. The Brookhaven threat is immediate and specific. Morrison's intelligence provides actionable information that we can use to prevent a successful enemy operation. But the broader question is whether her methods represent an evolution in intelligence work or a dangerous departure from proven techniques. The methods work, Rachel said simply. The mathematics don't lie about operational patterns any more than they lie about communication protocols or financial flows. Intelligence networks operate according to logical principles that can be analyzed and predicted using appropriate mathematical models. Foster looked up from the documents she had been reviewing. Morrison, if we authorize you to lead the Brookhaven counterintelligence operation, you'll be working with field officers who have decades of experience with traditional methods. Are you prepared to integrate mathematical analysis with human intelligence techniques? Rachel had been preparing for this question since her flight back from Singapore. Her success had proven that mathematical analysis could achieve operational results, but it had also revealed the limitations of working entirely alone. The intelligence she had acquired was valuable, but implementing effective countermeasures would require collaboration with officers who understood operational realities that extended beyond mathematical modeling. Mathematical analysis provides the framework for understanding enemy capabilities and predicting their operational choices, Rachel replied. But preventing their operations requires coordination with officers who understand tactical implementation, security protocols, and field procedures.
I'm not suggesting that mathematics should replace human intelligence. I'm suggesting that it should enhance and direct traditional techniques. The room erupted in discussion as senior officials debated the implications of authorizing Rachel to lead an operation that would essentially test whether mathematical intelligence analysis could be successfully integrated with traditional counterintelligence methods. Brookhaven National Laboratory sprawled across 5,300 acres of Long Island like a small city dedicated to the pursuit of scientific knowledge. Its maze of research facilities, particle accelerators, and administrative buildings housed some of America's most sensitive defense research, including the classified radar systems that had attracted Pacific Strategic Solutions' attention. For Rachel, now leading her first operational team, the facility represented both an opportunity to validate her mathematical approach to counterintelligence and a test of whether analytical precision could be translated into effective field operations. The team assembled in a conference room at the laboratory's security headquarters was unlike any that had worked together before. Agent Jennifer Park brought 15 years of counterintelligence experience from the FBI's New York field office, with a specialty in technical surveillance and electronic countermeasures. Marine Corps veteran and CIA operations officer Captain James Rodriguez contributed expertise in physical security and tactical response protocols. Dr. Elena Vasquez, borrowed from the National Security Agency's cryptographic division, would handle the sophisticated communication intercepts that Rachel's analysis suggested would be crucial for predicting the enemy network's specific infiltration timeline. What made the team unusual wasn't their diverse backgrounds. Intelligence operations routinely combined specialists from different agencies and services. What was unprecedented was that their operational strategy was based entirely on mathematical predictions rather than traditional intelligence gathering. Agent Park expressed the team's collective uncertainty during their first operational briefing. "Morrison, your analytical work is impressive, but we're essentially betting the security of a national laboratory on statistical models. Traditional intelligence operations rely on confirmed intelligence from multiple sources. We're working with mathematical projections that haven't been validated through standard verification procedures." Rachel understood the team's skepticism. Her Singapore operation had proven that mathematical analysis could penetrate enemy networks, but this was different, a defensive operation that required predicting enemy behavior with sufficient precision to position countermeasures effectively. The mathematics were sound, but translating analytical insights into operational success required a level of coordination between theory and practice that had never been attempted. Dr. Vasquez had been studying Rachel's communication intercept analysis with professional fascination. As a cryptographer, she understood mathematical precision in ways that traditional field officers sometimes found abstract. Morrison's pattern recognition is extraordinary. The enemy network's communication protocols contain embedded timing signals that reveal operational decision-making in real time. If we can maintain surveillance on their communication channels, we should be able to predict their tactical choices with remarkable accuracy. Captain Rodriguez approached the challenge from a tactical perspective that complemented the team's analytical capabilities. Mathematical analysis tells us when and how they'll attempt infiltration, but stopping them requires physical countermeasures that account for multiple contingencies. We need to position our response assets based on predictive models while maintaining flexibility for scenarios that fall outside the mathematical framework. The operational plan that emerged represented a synthesis of analytical precision and tactical expertise. Rachel's mathematical models indicated that the infiltration would occur during a 3-day window when the laboratory's security system upgrades would create specific vulnerabilities. More specifically, her analysis suggested that the actual attempt would happen during a 4-hour period on the second night when personnel changes and system maintenance would provide optimal conditions for unauthorized entry.
The enemy team would consist of 3 individuals based on communication pattern analysis and logistical requirements for the specific equipment they needed to steal. They would enter through the facility's northeast perimeter, where construction activities had temporarily modified standard security protocols. Their extraction route would utilize service roads that provided access to transportation corridors leading back to New York City. Traditional counterintelligence would have positioned surveillance assets to observe and document the infiltration attempt, gathering evidence for prosecution while allowing the operation to proceed far enough to identify all participants. Rachel's approach was different. Her mathematical analysis provided sufficient precision to intercept the infiltration at the moment of maximum vulnerability, when the enemy team would be committed to their operational plan, but before they could acquire the classified materials. The 3 days preceding the predicted infiltration were unlike anything Rachel had experienced in her analytical career. Instead of studying data patterns from the safety of her Langley office, she was coordinating real-time surveillance operations, managing communication intercepts, and positioning tactical response assets based on mathematical projections that would either be vindicated spectacularly or fail catastrophically. Agent Park's electronic surveillance detected the enemy team's arrival in New York 36 hours before Rachel's models predicted the infiltration attempt. 3 individuals using Canadian passports and business credentials identifying them as technology consultants had taken rooms at a hotel in Midtown Manhattan. Their communication patterns immediately matched the signatures that Rachel had identified in her Singapore intelligence, confirming that Pacific Strategic Solutions was indeed implementing the operational plan she had discovered. Dr. Vasquez's cryptographic analysis provided real-time updates on the enemy team's preparations. Their encrypted communications revealed logistical coordination, equipment verification, and timeline confirmation that validated Rachel's mathematical predictions with startling accuracy. The infiltration was scheduled for exactly when and how her analytical models had projected. Captain Rodriguez positioned tactical response assets around Brookhaven's perimeter based on the predicted infiltration route. Surveillance teams, communication intercept equipment, and rapid response personnel were deployed according to Rachel's mathematical analysis of optimal positioning for intercepting the enemy operation at the moment of maximum tactical advantage. The second night arrived with perfect weather conditions that matched the enemy team's operational requirements: clear skies for visual navigation, minimal wind for technical operations, and temperatures that would allow extended outdoor activity without specialized equipment. Rachel monitored the operation from Brookhaven's Security Command Center, watching her mathematical predictions transform into physical reality as surveillance assets detected movement consistent with her analytical models. At 11:47 p.m., exactly 17 minutes within the time frame her analysis had predicted, electronic sensors detected unauthorized personnel approaching the laboratory's northeast perimeter. Agent Park's surveillance confirmed 3 individuals carrying technical equipment consistent with the intelligence Rachel had acquired in Singapore. Their approach route, timing, and operational procedures matched her mathematical projections with precision that astonished even the team members who had worked most closely with her analytical methods. The interception proceeded according to the operational plan Rachel's mathematical analysis had made possible. Captain Rodriguez's tactical teams were positioned precisely where the enemy infiltrators would be most vulnerable to apprehension. Dr. Vasquez's communication intercepts provided real-time intelligence about the enemy team's coordination and decision-making. Agent Park's electronic countermeasures neutralized their technical capabilities at the optimal moment for tactical intervention. Within 18 minutes, all 3 infiltrators were in custody, their equipment secured, and their operational plan completely disrupted. No classified materials were compromised, no laboratory personnel were endangered, and no security protocols were permanently damaged. The counterintelligence operation had achieved complete success through mathematical precision that traditional approaches couldn't have matched. As the enemy team was processed through federal detention procedures, Rachel realized that her analytical approach to intelligence work had achieved something unprecedented. Mathematical models had not only detected and penetrated a sophisticated enemy network, but had enabled a defensive operation that prevented hostile intelligence gathering while capturing valuable assets for further investigation. The desk jockey had become something entirely new in American intelligence operations, an operational analyst whose mathematical precision could achieve tactical success that traditional methods had been unable to accomplish.
The interrogation rooms at the FBI's federal building in Lower Manhattan had hosted thousands of suspects over the decades, but the 3 individuals captured at Brookhaven represented something entirely different. Under the harsh fluorescent lighting, Marcus Chen, no relation to Rachel's former supervisor, appeared to be exactly what his Canadian passport claimed, a 42-year-old technology consultant specializing in industrial automation systems. His companions, Sarah Williams and David Park, maintained similar cover identities that would have withstood routine background checks and casual investigation. But Rachel's mathematical analysis of their captured equipment, communication devices, and operational materials revealed capabilities that far exceeded anything civilian technology consultants would possess or require. Their encrypted communication systems utilized military-grade cryptographic protocols. Their surveillance equipment incorporated technologies that were restricted to intelligence services. Most significantly, their operational planning documents contained detailed intelligence about American research facilities that could only have been acquired through systematic, long-term espionage activities. FBI Special Agent Lisa Chen, who had been assigned to lead the formal interrogation process, found herself working with intelligence that challenged traditional assumptions about how hostile networks operated. Morrison, these individuals aren't typical foreign operatives. Their backgrounds are too clean, their cover identities too sophisticated, their operational security too advanced for anything we've encountered from non-state actors. Rachel had been analyzing the captured materials for 72 hours since the Brookhaven operation, and what she had discovered extended far beyond the Singapore intelligence that had initiated the investigation. The mathematical patterns embedded in the suspect's communication logs revealed operational coordination with networks in 12 different countries, funding sources that traced back to legitimate corporations in 6 different jurisdictions, and planning documents for intelligence operations targeting 47 different American research and development facilities. "This isn't just corporate espionage or technology theft," Rachel explained to the expanded task force that had assembled to address the investigation's growing scope. "The mathematical analysis indicates systematic intelligence gathering that's been operating for at least 5 years, possibly longer. Pacific Strategic Solutions was just one operational component of a network that has capabilities approaching those of a state intelligence service." CIA Counterintelligence Division Chief Amanda Foster had flown down from Langley specifically to review Rachel's expanded analysis. Her experience with hostile intelligence operations had taught her the difference between opportunistic espionage and strategic intelligence campaigns. "Morrison, if your analysis is accurate, we're dealing with a threat that's been operating under our radar for years. How did traditional counterintelligence miss something this extensive?" The answer was both simple and disturbing. Traditional counterintelligence focused on identifying foreign intelligence officers, tracking known hostile operatives, and monitoring communications between suspect agents and their handlers. But this network operated differently. They used legitimate business structures, employed individuals with genuine professional credentials, and coordinated their activities through communication protocols that appeared to be routine corporate communications. Their operational security was designed specifically to avoid detection by traditional counterintelligence methods. They don't use known intelligence officers, they don't communicate through diplomatic channels, and they don't follow operational patterns that conventional surveillance would recognize as intelligence activities. They're essentially invisible to approaches that focus on human intelligence and behavioral analysis.
Dr. Elena Vasquez had been conducting detailed cryptographic analysis of the network's communication systems since the Brookhaven arrests. Her findings confirmed Rachel's mathematical models while revealing additional layers of sophistication that exceeded what the Singapore intelligence had suggested. Their communication protocols incorporate adaptive encryption that changes mathematical parameters based on external variables, stock market fluctuations, weather patterns, shipping schedules. The encryption keys are generated automatically using algorithms that make their communications virtually indistinguishable from routine business data. The technical sophistication implied resources and expertise that raised fundamental questions about the network's origins and objectives. NSA Technical Operations Director Michael Barnes had joined the investigation to assess whether the captured technologies indicated state sponsorship or represented a new category of non-state intelligence threat. The equipment these individuals were carrying represents several years and millions of dollars in research and development, Barnes explained. Some of the cryptographic technologies they were using are more advanced than what most allied intelligence services have access to. We're not dealing with criminals or corporate spies. We're dealing with an organization that has invested heavily in developing capabilities that rival those of major intelligence agencies. The interrogations themselves had yielded limited information. All three suspects maintained their cover identities and insisted that they were legitimate technology consultants who had been hired to conduct routine industrial assessments. Their stories were consistent, their backgrounds were verifiable, and their operational security had been designed to withstand exactly the kind of pressure that FBI interrogation specialists were trained to apply. But Rachel's mathematical analysis of their behavioral patterns during interrogation revealed subtle inconsistencies that suggested extensive counterinterrogation training. Their stress responses, linguistic patterns, and physiological indicators followed protocols that were remarkably similar to those used by intelligence officers from several different countries. They're not breaking because they're not designed to break, Rachel observed after reviewing surveillance footage from the interrogation sessions. Their training is specifically focused on maintaining cover identities under exactly these circumstances. Traditional interrogation techniques assume that suspects will eventually reveal information about their activities or associates. These individuals have been prepared for indefinite detention without compromising operational security. The breakthrough came when Rachel realized that the network's mathematical predictability extended beyond operational patterns, to include contingency protocols. Her analysis of their communication logs revealed embedded algorithms that activated automatically when operatives failed to maintain scheduled contact with their controllers. These protocols would initiate security procedures designed to protect the broader network when individual cells were compromised. Their communication systems have been sending automated signals since their arrest, Dr. Vasquez reported. The mathematical patterns indicate that the network is implementing security protocols in response to the Brookhaven compromise. They're restructuring their operations, changing communication frequencies, and probably evacuating personnel from facilities that might be vulnerable to follow-up investigations. This created an operational urgency that transformed the investigation from a defensive counterintelligence operation to an offensive campaign against a hostile network that was actively adapting to American interdiction efforts. Rachel's mathematical analysis provided insights into the network's restructuring processes, but translating those insights into effective countermeasures required rapid coordination between multiple agencies and services. CIA Operations Director Sarah Kim authorized the formation of a joint task force specifically designed to exploit Rachel's analytical methods while the network was still vulnerable to mathematical prediction. Morrison, your approach has given us a window into hostile intelligence operations that traditional methods couldn't detect. But windows don't stay open indefinitely. If this network adapts their operational security to account for mathematical analysis, we may lose our ability to track their activities. The task force that assembled over the following 48 hours represented an unprecedented integration of analytical and operational capabilities. Rachel's mathematical approach would provide strategic intelligence about network vulnerabilities and operational patterns. Traditional field officers would implement tactical operations based on analytical predictions. Technical specialists would monitor communication intercepts and develop countermeasures for the network's adaptive security protocols. But the network was adapting faster than anyone had anticipated. Rachel's analysis indicated that they were implementing security changes that would make their activities significantly more difficult to detect and predict. The mathematical patterns that had enabled the Singapore penetration and Brookhaven interception were becoming less reliable as the network modified their operational procedures to account for the possibility of analytical surveillance. We have perhaps 2 weeks before their security adaptations make our analytical approach significantly less effective, Rachel warned the task force during their initial operational briefing. If we're going to exploit our current intelligence advantage, we need to move quickly against their remaining operational facilities before they complete their restructuring process. The intelligence Rachel had acquired pointed to network facilities in 7 different cities.
each conducting specialized intelligence-gathering operations against specific categories of American research and development activities. The facilities operated independently, but coordinated their activities through the mathematical communication protocols that Rachel had learned to decode and predict. Taking down the entire network would require simultaneous operations across multiple jurisdictions, coordinated timing that accounted for the network's security protocols, and tactical precision that prevented any individual facility from warning the others about American counterintelligence activities. Rachel found herself at the center of the largest counterintelligence operation in recent CIA history, one that would either validate her mathematical approach to intelligence work on an unprecedented scale or demonstrate the limitations of analytical methods when applied to sophisticated adaptive threats. The command center at CIA headquarters had been transformed into something resembling a military operations center, with multiple screens displaying real-time intelligence feeds from 7 different cities. Rachel stood before a wall-mounted display showing synchronized countdown timers for each operational location. Her mathematical models having calculated the precise timing windows necessary for simultaneous strikes against the entire network before their adaptive security protocols could warn remaining cells of American interdiction efforts. Operation Distributed Strike represented the culmination of everything Rachel had learned about mathematical intelligence analysis. Unlike traditional counterintelligence operations that focused on individual targets or specific threats, this campaign required predicting and countering the coordinated responses of an adaptive network that was actively modifying its operational security in response to American surveillance. The 7 target facilities spanned the continental United States, a software development company in Seattle that was conducting systematic penetration of aerospace research databases, a financial consulting firm in Chicago that specialized in acquiring proprietary manufacturing technologies, a biotech research company in Boston that was targeting pharmaceutical development data, an engineering consulting group in Denver that focused on energy infrastructure intelligence, a technology transfer company in Atlanta that was systematically acquiring defense contractor information, a market research firm in Phoenix that specialized in semiconductor and electronics intelligence, and a business intelligence company in San Diego that was coordinating maritime and naval research penetration. Each facility operated independently, maintaining different cover stories and operational methods, but Rachel's mathematical analysis had revealed that they communicated through synchronized protocols that allowed them to coordinate their intelligence gathering while maintaining operational security that had prevented traditional counterintelligence from recognizing their coordinated activities. FBI Assistant Director Robert Hayes, different from the CIA operations officer who had originally dismissed Rachel's work, coordinated the law enforcement aspects of the operation from the FBI's Strategic Information and Operations Center. His teams would handle the actual arrests and evidence seizure, but the operational timing and tactical coordination was based entirely on Rachel's mathematical predictions about how the network would respond to simultaneous pressure across multiple locations. Morrison, we're essentially betting the success of the largest counterintelligence operation in recent history on your mathematical models, Hayes observed as final preparations proceeded. Traditional operations rely on confirmed intelligence and multiple verification sources. We're operating on analytical predictions that, while they've been accurate so far, haven't been tested at this scale or complexity.
Rachel understood the magnitude of what they were attempting. Her Singapore operation had validated mathematical analysis against a single target. The Brookhaven interception had proven that analytical predictions could enable successful defensive operations. But Operation Distributed Strike required her mathematical models to predict and counter the coordinated responses of 7 different facilities operating in different jurisdictions with different operational procedures. The network's communication protocols are mathematically consistent across all facilities, Rachel explained for the final operational briefing. Their security adaptations follow algorithms that we can predict and exploit. The key is simultaneous action that prevents any individual facility from warning the others about American counterintelligence activities. NSA Deputy Director Catherine Mills had been monitoring the network's communication adaptations since the Brookhaven arrests.
Her cryptographic analysis teams had identified subtle changes in the network's operational security that confirmed Rachel's predictions about their adaptive capabilities, while revealing vulnerabilities that could be exploited during the brief window before their security modifications were complete. The network is implementing new communication protocols that will make their activities significantly more difficult to detect and predict, Mills reported. But the changeover process creates temporary vulnerabilities that Morrison's mathematical analysis has identified. We have approximately 6 hours before their new security protocols are fully operational. The operational plan that had emerged from Rachel's analysis was elegant in its mathematical precision. Each facility would be approached using methods specifically designed to exploit their individual operational security weaknesses while preventing them from communicating with other network components. The timing was calculated to account for different time zones, communication schedules, security protocols, and response capabilities. At exactly 3:17 a.m. Eastern Time, FBI tactical teams simultaneously approached all 7 facilities. Rachel monitored the operations from Langley's command center, watching her mathematical predictions translate into coordinated law enforcement actions across 3 time zones. The mathematical models that had begun as academic exercises in pattern recognition had become the strategic foundation for the most complex counterintelligence operation in CIA history. The Seattle operation proceeded exactly as Rachel's analysis had predicted. FBI agents arrested 4 individuals at the software development company, seized computer equipment containing systematic records of aerospace research penetration, and discovered communication devices that confirmed their coordination with the broader network. The facility's operational security had been designed to prevent traditional surveillance, but it was vulnerable to approaches based on mathematical analysis of their communication timing and personnel movement patterns. In Chicago, the financial consulting firm's operational security proved more sophisticated than traditional counterintelligence had anticipated, but Rachel's mathematical analysis had identified predictable vulnerabilities in their weekend security protocols. FBI teams captured 3 operatives and acquired financial records documenting millions of dollars in payments for proprietary manufacturing technologies acquired through systematic industrial espionage. The Boston biotech facility presented the greatest operational challenge due to its location within a larger research complex. But Rachel's analysis of their communication patterns had identified specific windows when their security protocols would be most vulnerable to law enforcement intervention. The operation resulted in 5 arrests and the seizure of comprehensive databases containing stolen pharmaceutical research data from dozens of American companies. Denver, Atlanta, Phoenix, and San Diego operations proceeded with similar success, each validating specific aspects of Rachel's mathematical predictions while demonstrating that analytical intelligence could enable tactical operations that traditional approaches had been unable to accomplish. Within 4 hours, all 7 facilities had been neutralized, their operational personnel arrested, and their intelligence gathering capabilities completely disrupted. But the true measure of Operation Distributed Strike's success wasn't just the tactical results. It was the comprehensive intelligence acquired about the network's structure, capabilities, and objectives. The seized materials revealed an intelligence operation that had been systematically acquiring American research and development data for more than 6 years, with capabilities that approached those of major state intelligence services. The financial records alone documented over $200 million in payments for acquired intelligence, including comprehensive databases of American aerospace research, detailed information about next-generation military technologies, proprietary pharmaceutical development data, and systematic penetration of energy infrastructure research. The scope of the intelligence compromise was staggering, but Rachel's mathematical analysis had enabled its complete disruption before additional damage could occur. Dr. Elena Vasquez's analysis of the seized communication equipment revealed that the network had been preparing to implement security protocols that would have made them virtually undetectable to traditional counterintelligence methods. Their adaptive capabilities were specifically designed to counter human intelligence gathering, behavioral analysis, and conventional electronic surveillance. Only mathematical analysis of their communication patterns had provided the analytical framework necessary for detecting and countering their operations. CIA Director Jennifer Walsh, who had flown back from Brussels to personally oversee the operation's conclusion, found herself confronting the implications of Rachel's success for the future of American intelligence capabilities. The mathematical approach that had been dismissed as academic theory just months ago had achieved operational results that traditional methods had been unable to accomplish. Morrison, what you've demonstrated challenges fundamental assumptions about how intelligence work should be conducted, Walsh observed. Mathematical analysis has detected threats that human intelligence missed, penetrated networks that conventional surveillance couldn't access, and enabled operations that traditional approaches couldn't execute. The success of Operation Distributed Strike reverberated through the American intelligence community in ways that extended far beyond the immediate tactical results. Rachel's mathematical approach had proven that analytical precision could achieve operational effectiveness that traditional methods couldn't match. More significantly, her success had revealed that modern intelligence threats might require analytical capabilities that existing organizational structures and training programs weren't designed to provide. 3 months after the operation's conclusion, Rachel found herself in an office that she had never expected to occupy: Director of Mathematical Intelligence Analysis, a position created specifically to institutionalize the analytical approaches that had enabled her operational successes. Her staff included mathematicians, cryptographers, computer scientists, and data analysts who were developing analytical methods for detecting and countering intelligence threats that traditional approaches couldn't address. The transformation was both personal and institutional. Rachel Morrison, who had begun her career as an invisible analyst studying enemy communications from a Langley cubicle, had become the architect of a new approach to intelligence work that was reshaping how America defends against sophisticated threats. Her mathematical models were being applied to intelligence challenges ranging from cyber warfare to terrorism to industrial espionage, demonstrating that analytical precision could achieve strategic advantages that traditional intelligence methods couldn't provide. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. The intelligence community that had once dismissed mathematical analysis as an interesting but ultimately limited support function had been forced to recognize that modern threats might require analytical capabilities that existing organizational structures and training programs weren't designed to provide. During a quiet moment in her new office, surrounded by computer monitors displaying mathematical models that were tracking hostile intelligence activities across dozens of countries, Rachel reflected on the journey that had transformed her from a dismissed desk jockey into the leader of a revolutionary approach to intelligence analysis. The numbers, as always, told the story with perfect clarity. Mathematical analysis had detected threats that human intelligence missed, predicted enemy behavior with precision that traditional methods couldn't match, and enabled operational successes that conventional approaches couldn't achieve. The desk jockey had proven that in a world increasingly defined by data and algorithms, mathematical precision might be the most powerful weapon in America's intelligence arsenal. The woman they had called an intel desk jockey had infiltrated enemy headquarters, stolen their battle plans, and revolutionized American intelligence capabilities through the elegant simplicity of mathematical truth. In a profession where perception often mattered more than reality, Rachel Morrison had used pure analytical precision to achieve something that no amount of traditional tradecraft could accomplish. She had made the invisible visible, and in doing so, had changed the very nature of intelligence work itself. But the implications of Rachel's success extended far beyond the immediate operational victories. The intelligence gathered during Operation Distributed Strike had revealed connections to hostile networks operating in 23 countries, with financial flows that traced back to state actors who had been using sophisticated non-attribution methods to conduct intelligence operations against American interests without triggering traditional counterintelligence responses.
The mathematical patterns Rachel had identified weren't limited to the network they had dismantled. Her analytical methods had revealed a new category of intelligence threat: mathematically sophisticated organizations that operated below the threshold of traditional detection while conducting systematic espionage campaigns that accumulated strategic advantages over extended periods. These networks represented an evolution in intelligence warfare that traditional defensive methods were structurally incapable of addressing. 6 months after Operation Distributed Strike, Rachel found herself briefing members of the Senate Intelligence Committee about the broader implications of mathematical intelligence analysis. The senators, accustomed to discussions about budget allocations and oversight procedures, struggled to understand how mathematical models could identify threats that experienced intelligence officers had missed for years. Senator Margaret Collins, the committee's ranking member, had reviewed classified summaries of Rachel's operational successes, but remained skeptical about institutionalizing analytical methods that seemed to bypass traditional intelligence verification procedures. Ms. Morrison, while your results are impressive, how do we ensure that mathematical analysis doesn't replace the human judgment and cultural understanding that have been fundamental to successful intelligence operations? Rachel had anticipated this question. The intelligence community's resistance to mathematical methods reflected legitimate concerns about maintaining capabilities that had proven effective in previous operational environments. But her analytical work had demonstrated that modern threats might require capabilities that traditional training and organizational structures couldn't provide. Senator, mathematical analysis doesn't replace human intelligence. It enhances and directs traditional methods by identifying patterns and vulnerabilities that human observation might miss, Rachel explained. The Singapore network operated for 6 years without being detected by conventional surveillance, precisely because their operational security was designed to exploit the limitations of traditional analytical approaches. The committee's technical advisor, Dr. James Patterson, had been studying Rachel's mathematical models with professional fascination. As a former NSA cryptographer, he understood the theoretical foundations of her analytical approach while recognizing its practical implications for intelligence operations. Morrison's methods represent a paradigm shift in how we conceptualize intelligence analysis. Traditional approaches focus on human factors and behavioral patterns, but modern threats increasingly operate using algorithmic decision-making and mathematical operational security. The discussion that followed revealed the broader challenge facing American intelligence capabilities. Rachel's success had demonstrated that mathematical analysis could achieve results that traditional methods couldn't match. But institutionalizing her approach required fundamental changes in how intelligence officers were trained, how operations were planned, and how analytical results were integrated with tactical activities. The resistance wasn't just philosophical, it was practical. Most intelligence officers had been trained in methods that emphasized human psychology, cultural analysis, and behavioral prediction. Rachel's mathematical approach required different skills, different analytical frameworks, and different operational procedures. Integrating mathematical intelligence analysis with traditional capabilities meant retraining thousands of officers and restructuring organizational procedures that had been developed over decades. But the alternative was accepting that American intelligence capabilities might be structurally inadequate for addressing modern threats. The networks Rachel had detected and disrupted represented a new category of intelligence challenge: mathematically sophisticated, globally distributed, and specifically designed to exploit traditional counterintelligence limitations. Without analytical capabilities that matched their mathematical sophistication, American intelligence agencies would be fighting modern threats with obsolete weapons. The solution that emerged was both pragmatic and revolutionary. Rather than replacing traditional intelligence methods, Rachel's mathematical approach would be integrated with existing capabilities to create hybrid analytical systems that combined human insight with mathematical precision. Intelligence officers would receive training in mathematical analysis, while mathematicians and data scientists would learn operational procedures that allowed them to translate analytical insights into effective countermeasures. The National Intelligence University established the Center for Mathematical Intelligence Analysis with Rachel as its founding director. The center's mission was developing analytical methods that could detect and counter mathematically sophisticated threats while training the next generation of intelligence officers in integrated analytical approaches that combine traditional tradecraft with mathematical precision. The impact was immediate and profound. Mathematical analysis began identifying hostile intelligence activities that had been operating undetected for years. Networks that had successfully avoided traditional surveillance were exposed through pattern recognition algorithms that revealed their operational signatures. Intelligence operations that had seemed impossibly complex were successfully countered through mathematical prediction of enemy behavior and tactical response. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural.
The intelligence community that had once viewed mathematical analysis as an interesting but ultimately limited support function began recognizing that analytical precision might be essential for addressing modern intelligence challenges. Officers who had built their careers on traditional methods began integrating mathematical approaches into their operational planning. Analytical results that had once been dismissed as academic speculation became the foundation for successful counterintelligence operations. The resistance wasn't just philosophical, it was practical. Most intelligence officers had been trained in methods that emphasized human psychology, cultural analysis, and behavioral prediction. Rachel's mathematical approach required different skills, different analytical frameworks, and different operational procedures. Integrating mathematical intelligence analysis with traditional capabilities meant retraining thousands of officers and restructuring organizational procedures that had been developed over decades. But the alternative was accepting that American intelligence capabilities might be structurally inadequate for addressing modern threats. The networks Rachel had detected and disrupted represented a new category of intelligence challenge: mathematically sophisticated, globally distributed, and specifically designed to exploit traditional counterintelligence limitations. Without analytical capabilities that match their mathematical sophistication, American intelligence agencies would be fighting modern threats with obsolete weapons. The solution that emerged was both pragmatic and revolutionary. Rather than replacing traditional intelligence methods, Rachel's mathematical approach would be integrated with existing capabilities to create hybrid analytical systems that combined human insight with mathematical precision. Intelligence officers would receive training in mathematical analysis, while mathematicians and data scientists would learn operational procedures that allowed them to translate analytical insights into effective countermeasures. The National Intelligence University established the Center for Mathematical Intelligence Analysis with Rachel as its founding director. The center's mission was developing analytical methods that could detect and counter mathematically sophisticated threats while training the next generation of intelligence officers in integrated analytical approaches that combined traditional tradecraft with mathematical precision. The impact was immediate and profound. Mathematical analysis began identifying hostile intelligence activities that had been operating undetected for years. Networks that had successfully avoided traditional surveillance were exposed through pattern recognition algorithms that revealed their operational signatures. Intelligence operations that had seemed impossibly complex were successfully countered through mathematical prediction of enemy behavior and tactical response. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The intelligence community that had once viewed mathematical analysis as an interesting but ultimately limited support function began recognizing that analytical precision might be essential for addressing modern intelligence challenges. Officers who had built their careers on traditional methods began integrating mathematical approaches into their operational planning. Analytical results that had once been dismissed as academic speculation became the foundation for successful counterintelligence operations. Rachel's personal journey had paralleled this institutional transformation. The analyst who had been dismissed as a desk jockey had become one of the most influential figures in American intelligence. But her success hadn't changed her fundamental approach to the work. She still spent hours analyzing patterns that others found tedious, still preferred the certainty of mathematical relationships to the ambiguity of human behavior, still believed that precise analytical thinking could solve problems that seemed impossibly complex. The difference was that the intelligence community had finally recognized what Rachel had always known, that in a world increasingly defined by data, algorithms, and mathematical relationships, analytical precision wasn't just useful, it was essential. The threats America faced in the 21st century required capabilities that traditional intelligence methods couldn't provide, and mathematical analysis offered tools that could bridge the gap between analytical insight and operational effectiveness. During a quiet evening in her office at the new center, Rachel reviewed intelligence reports that documented the continuing success of mathematical analytical methods. Hostile networks were being detected and disrupted with unprecedented effectiveness. Intelligence operations that had once seemed beyond American capabilities were being executed with mathematical precision. The analytical revolution she had initiated was transforming American intelligence capabilities in ways that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. The numbers, as always, told the story with perfect clarity. Mathematical analysis had detected 347 previously unknown hostile intelligence operations, prevented 89 successful enemy penetrations of classified facilities, and enabled the disruption of intelligence networks operating in 67 countries. The desk jockey's mathematical precision had become America's most effective.
Sophisticated weapon against sophisticated intelligence threats. Looking back on her journey from invisible analyst to revolutionary leader, Rachel Morrison understood that her greatest achievement wasn't any individual operational success. It was proving that analytical thinking could be translated into practical effectiveness, that mathematical precision could achieve results that traditional approaches couldn't match, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon against sophisticated enemies was the elegant simplicity of mathematical truth. The woman they had underestimated had not only infiltrated enemy headquarters and stolen their battle plans, she had fundamentally changed how America defended itself against the sophisticated intelligence threats of the modern world, one mathematical equation at a time. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.